Hey everyone, I'm Paul. In one of my previous videos, I replaced the dim headlight on my scooter with these sweet off-road lights and made a bracket to hold them right here. The metal was a little too thin and the bracket broke after a while. So here we are with duct tape. I could weld the bracket back together, but these lights are very ugly. Instead of doing that, I ordered this sweet chrome motorcycle headlight on Amazon. It's cheap and it's Chinese, just like my scooter. I chose this chrome headlight with housing and brackets for $70 on Amazon. It's fairly expensive and the reviews are mostly good, so I have high expectations. I want this thing to light up the road and not wobble on the scooter. Can it do that? Let's find out. Here it says the black wire is ground, white is for the low beam, and red is high beam. With the black and white wires connected, most of the LEDs come on. If you connect black and red only, all the LEDs come on. You can also connect the white wire, then add the red wire to it and get the same result. That's how my scooter is currently wired. Low beam is always on, and high beam gets power with the high beam switch. My scooter is held together by duct tape, so the first step is peeling off some tape. The front panel has 4 screws going into mostly broken and cracked plastic. The front screw goes into metal, so that one actually does something. With the front panel off, I can unplug the light connector and remove the old headlight. Let's get the tape off the wires and check out how I hooked up the old lights. Both lights get their ground from the green wire. The low beam gets power from the white wire, and high beam is blue. Let's cut the wires and strip them. I like to strip about ½ inch of wire, then twist it together with the new wire. Soldering each connection makes it so the wires don't come loose and so they can't get corrosion in between the strands of wire. If wiring is a part of your life, I recommend you go out and buy a butane-powered soldering iron. Even the cheap ones work. I always use heat shrink to seal up my connections. A box of heat shrink is cheap on Amazon and you only need a lighter to shrink it down. Before we continue, I need to tell you I rewired the headlight in my scooter last time I worked on it. Here's the clip from that video. I'm unplugging the headlight and testing the voltage with the engine running. The low beam shows 0 volts DC. Weird. I'm switching the voltmeter to AC. This scooter uses alternating current instead of direct current for the headlight. The LED bulb I used earlier was compatible with AC, but the new LEDs require DC. I'll need to rewire the dimmer switch. The brown, white, and blue wires are for the headlight. The black wire is DC power for the horn. It's on when the key is on. I'm cutting the brown wire because I don't want the AC power from the scooter. I'm splicing into the black wire because it has DC power. I'll connect the brown headlight wire to the black wire. This switch is wired to turn the low beams or the high beams on. I want the low beams to stay on all the time, so I'm connecting the white wire directly to power. This way, when I turn on the high beam, the low beam also stays on. The brown wire is cut off at the connector, and the black, brown, and white wires are all connected together. Okay, let's test out the new headlight. I'll hang it here and plug it in. My headlight is on anytime the key is on because it's wired to use DC from the battery. Most Chinese scooters use AC from the charging system for the headlight, so it only works when the engine is running. These mounting brackets go to the front fork on a cruiser motorcycle. My setup isn't like that, but I'm thinking I can just cut the curved part off the bracket and bolt it onto the handlebars. I cut the bracket with the angle grinder, then smoothed out the edge a bit so it doesn't cut me. These handlebars already have big holes, but I need one more so the bracket doesn't tilt up and down. I'm using 1-inch long, 1/4 20 bolts from the hardware store with some big fender washers and nylon locking nuts. They won't vibrate loose, and because the holes are really big, I'll have a little extra adjustment here. Now the headlight housing just bolts in between the brackets. It has rubber grommets and square nuts that go inside. It relies on the rubber not to tear so the nuts don't spin. Will these rubber grommets do a good job holding the headlight? I have some doubts. Now I can just drop this LED headlight assembly into the bucket. It latches in up top and has 2 Phillips head screws down below to hold it in. Let's do another test. Okay, it turns on and the high beam works. I'm wrapping the connector in electrical tape to keep water out of it and to prevent it from unplugging itself. Now the cover goes back on. I'm pretty much done here. Let's go outside. On the garage door, it looks like the high beam adds a little rectangle of light in the same place as the other little rectangle. In the street, the low beam is pretty good, but the high beam is laughably bad. It just adds this little rectangle of light closer to the scooter and doesn't shine higher at all. I can't see anything farther down the road. These are the off-road lights I just took off. You can see the low beam is a smoother, more even floodlight that starts at the scooter, extends to the sidewalk, and shines farther down the road than the new headlight. The high beam shines way farther down the road and really lights up those signs. These lights are really good. Okay, let's look at that round motorcycle headlight I just bought again. I would say that's a serious downgrade. For $70 too. The off-road lights were cheaper than that. There we have it. This headlight is a piece of junk. Don't buy one like this. The low beam pattern is actually quite nice, it's wide enough, and I can see the road, but for some reason, the high beam gives you a little square of light like this, lower than the low beam. Basically, I don't have a high beam anymore, and it's much worse than these off-road lights I had before. Also, even though the bolts are as tight as possible, for some reason the light still moves very easily, so I'm going to have to add some washers and fix that whole situation. The light moves because the rubber bushings got shredded. I took them out and used some big fender washers to clamp the headlight housing, and now it's very sturdy. Chinese companies are very good at making products that look good, but don't really work right. I'm not surprised by this light being horrible, and I think it's funny and kind of appropriate to use this level of quality on my Chinese scooter. It does look really good, and who needs a working high beam? You shouldn't be riding one of these scooters over 40 miles an hour at night anyway. Would you pay $70 for a headlight this bad? Am I a fool for buying it? Leave a comment below.